We climbed out of the carving. Behind us lie the canyons and farmers' townships. Below us, the plain stretches out long and wide, brown and gold grassed. Clumps of trees clustered along the streams, and on the other side of the plain, the blue mountains rise beyond the snow on their peaks. Snow that stays. It is a long way to go in any season, especially now at the very edge of winter. I know our odds aren't good, but I'm still glad to have made it this far. It's so far, Eli says next to me, his voice shaky. It might not be as far as it looks on the map. I say, let's move to the first group of trees, Vic suggests. Is it safe? Eli asks. I look up at the sky. If we're careful, Vic says, already moving, his eyes on the stream. That stream's different from the one in the canyon. I bet the fish here are big ones. We make our way to the first clump of trees. How much do you know about fishing, Vic asks me. Nothing, I say. I don't even know much about water. There wasn't too much near our village except the society piped in. The stream back in the canyons aren't wide and slow in places like this one. They're smaller, quicker. Aren't the fish dead by now? Isn't the water too cold? Moving water rarely freezes, Vic tells me. He crouches down and looks at the river where things move. We could catch these, he said excitedly. I bet they're brown trout. They're so good for eating. Freddie crouched down next to him, trying to figure out, too. How could we do it? They're fishing spawning. Vic tells us they're sluggish. If we reach in and scoop them up, if we get close enough, there's not much sport in it, he says regretfully. They never have done this back home, but there we had line. Where is back home? I asked Vic. He looks at me, considering, but maybe he figures that since he knows now where I'm from, he can tell me where he started too. I'm from Casmus, he says. You should see it. The mountains are big there, and bigger than the one over there. He gestures across the plain. The stream are full of fish. Then he stops, looks back at the water where things move in the deep. Eli still crouched down, keeping low like I told him he should. Still, I don't like the way this plain sits out bare under the sky between the carving and the mountains. Look for a rifle, Vic says now to Eli. It's a place in the stream where the water gets shallow and moves faster, like here. Then do this. Vic crouches down slowly, quietly by the stream edge and waits. Then he slides his hand into the water behind the fish, little by little moving his fingers upstream until they're under the fish's belly. Then quickly he flips the fish out onto the bank and flops and gasps for air, body slick, and we watch as the fish dies. That night, we go back inside the carving where we can hide and smoke of a fire. I strike it to light, saving the farmer's matches for another time. It's the first real fire we've made, and Eli loves holding his hands to lick the flame. It's one thing to be fired upon, another to be warmed. Don't get too close, I warn Eli. He nods. The light flickers on the canyon walls and sends colors of the sunset back. Orange fire, orange stone. We cook our fish slowly in the embers so that it will last longer in the journey across the plain. I watch the smoke and hope it dissipates before it rises above the canyon walls. It will take hours for all the fish to be ready, Vic says, because we need all the water to be removed from the flesh, and they'll last longer that way, and we need the food. We balance the odds of whoever was in the township following us. All this way against that of needing more stores for the plain and food worn out. Now that we've seen how much ground we have to cross, we'll all feel hungry. There's a kind of fish called rainbow, Vic says, face reflective. Most of them died out long ago, in the warming, but I caught one once in cat mess. Did it taste as good as this? Eli asks. Oh sure, Vic says. You threw it back, didn't you? I ask. Vic grins. Couldn't stand to eat it. He says, it was the only one I've ever seen. I thought it might be the last one left. I sit back on my heels, my belly full, and I feel free. Away from both the society and the former townships. Everything isn't poisoned. Moving water rarely freezes. Those two things are good to know. I'm happiest when I have been since the hill. I think there's a chance I might make it back to her after all. Were your parents officers before they were reclassified, Vic asked me. I laughed. My father an officer? Or my mother? For different reasons and suggestions is ridiculous. No, I say. Why? You know about the guns, he says, and the wiring in the coats? I wondered if one of them had taught you. My father didn't teach me that, I say, but he wasn't an officer. Did he learn from that form of farming too? Or the rising? No, I say. Some of it he learned from the society for his work. Most he taught himself. What about your parents? My father was an officer, he said, and I'm not all surprised. It makes sense. Vic, bearing his ability to command, and the way he said that the coats were military grade, the fact that he once lived by the army bases. What could have happened to cause reclassification of someone in such good standing, a member of the family of officers? My family's dead, Eli says, when it clears that Vic doesn't intend to say anything more. Though I guessed it must be the case, I still hate to hear him say it. How? Vic asks. My parents got sick. They died in a medical center in Central, and then I got sent away. I've been a citizen. Someone could have adopted me, but I wasn't. I've been in aberration for as long as I can remember. His parents got sick and died? That wasn't supposed to happen. Didn't happen. As far as I knew, people as young as Eli's parents must have been. Not even aberrations. Dying that early doesn't happen unless you live in the outer provinces. And it especially doesn't happen in Central. I'd assumed they died like Eli was meant to, out in the village somehow. But Vic doesn't seem surprised. I don't know if that's for Eli's benefit or Vic's, but I've heard something like this before. I'm sorry, Eli, I say. I was lucky. If Patrick and Ada's son hadn't died and Patrick hadn't pushed so hard, I never would have been brought to Oria. I might be dead now. I'm sorry too, Vic says. Eli doesn't answer. He scoots closer to the fire and closes his eyes as if talking exhausted him. I don't want to talk about it anymore, he says quietly. I just wanted to tell you. After a pause, I change the subject. Eli asks, what did you bring from the farmer's cave? Eli opens his eyes and pulls the pack across the ground towards him. They're heavy, so I couldn't bring many, he said. Only 2. But look, they're books. The words and pictures. He opens one up and shows us a painting of an enormous ringing creature with colors all along its back, curls through the sky, an enormous stone horse. I think my father told me about these books, I say. The stories were for children. They could look at the pictures while the parents read the words. Then, when the kid got older, they could do it all by themselves. These have to be worth something, Vic says. Eli's chosen are hard to trade, I'd imagine. The stories can be replicated, but the pictures cannot. But that at the moment he grabbed them, Eli wasn't thinking of trading. We sat by the embers and the fire, read the stories over Eli's shoulder. There were words we don't know, but we puzzled out the meaning by looking at the picture. Eli yawned and closed the book. We can look at them again tomorrow, he says decidedly. And I grinned to myself and packed them into his bag. He seems to be telling us I brought these here and you can see them on my terms. I pick up a stick from the ground and start writing. You see his name in the dirt. Eli breathes slow as he falls asleep. I love someone too, Vic says to me a few minutes later, back in Camas. He clears his throat. Vic's story, I never thought he'd tell it. But there's something about the fire tonight that makes us all talk. I wait a moment to make sure I ask the right question. A bright spot in the cold flares grows in the dark. What was her name? I ask. A pause. Lainey, Vic says. She worked at the base where I lived. She told me about the pilot. He clears his throat. I heard it before, of course. But the base people used to wonder if one of the officers could be the pilot. But for Lainey, her family, it was different. When they talked about the pilot, it meant more to them. I glance at the spot where I wrote, see his name over and over in the dirt. I wish I could do that, he says. We never had anything to scribe in ports in Cadmus. I can teach you how I do it. You do it? He says. On this, he shows a piece of wood towards me. Cottonwood, probably. The strand of tree where we fished. I start in on it with a sharp piece of stone. Not looking up at Vic. Near us, Eli sleeps on. She used to fish too, Vic says. I'd go meet her in the stream. Vic stopped for a moment. My father was so angry when he found out. I'd see him get angry before, and I knew what would happen when he did. People fall in love, I say, my voice hoarse. It happens, not anomalies and citizens, Vic says, and most people don't celebrate their contract. I draw in my breath. She was an anomaly. They celebrated their contract. It wasn't sanctioned by the society, he says, but when the time came, I chose not to be matched. And I asked my parents if I could contract with her, and they said yes. The anomalies have their own ceremony. No one recognized it but them. I didn't know that, I say, and I dig the agate deeper into the wood. I wasn't sure. Anomalies, other than the ones in the carvings, still exist so recently and so close to society. In Oria, no one had seen or heard of any in years, except the one who killed my cousin, the first Markingham boy. I asked her parents on the day I saw the rainbow. Vic says, I pulled it out of the river and saw the colors flash in the sun. I put it right back when I saw what it was. When I told her parents about it, they said it was a good omen and a sign. You know what that is? I nod. My father talked about signs sometimes. I haven't seen one since, Vic says. A rainbow trout, I mean. It wasn't a good omen after all. Vic takes a deep breath. Only 2 weeks later, I heard the officials were coming for us and went to find her, but she was gone. So was her family. Vic reaches for the cottonwood, a hand in the back to him, although I haven't finished. He turns the piece and studies the way her name looks right now. Lan, almost a small straight line, like notches in a boot. And suddenly I know he has been making all along. Not survived in the outer providence, time lived without her. Society will found me before I got home. Vic says, they took me to the outer providences right away. He handed the carving back to me, and I started working on it again. And firelight plays with agate like the sun might have on the scales of the rainbow that Vic pulled out of the water. What happened to your family? I asked Vic. Nothing, I hope. He says the society reclassified me automatically, of course, but I wasn't the parent. My family should be fine. I heard the uncertainty in his voice. I'm sure they are, I tell him. Vic looks at me. Really? If society gets rid of an aberration or anomaly, that's one thing, but if they get rid of everyone connected to them, there won't be anyone left. This is what I hoped when Patrick and Ada might be all right too. Vic nods and lets out his breath. You know what I thought? What? I ask. You'll laugh, Vic says, but when you said the poem the first time, I didn't just wonder if you were part of the Rising, I hoped you'd come and get me out there. My own personal pilot. What would you think of that? I asked. My father was high in the army, Vic says, very high up. I thought for sure he'd send someone out there to save me. I thought it was you. Sorry to have disappointed you, I say. My voice sounds cold. You didn't disappoint, Vic says. You got us out of there, didn't you? In spite of myself, I have a small feeling of satisfaction when Vic says that. I smile in the darkness. What do you think will happen to her? I asked after a few moments. I think her family ran away, Vic says. The anomalies and aberrations around us were disappearing, but I don't think the society got them all. Maybe her family left to try and find the pilot. Do you think they did? I wish now I hadn't said so much about the pilot not being real. I hope so, Vic says. His voice sounded hollow, now that the story is told. I gave him a piece of cottonwood and carved with her name, and he looks at it for a moment and then puts it in his pocket. So, Vic says, now let's think about getting across the plain and back into wherever we can find. I'm going to keep following you for a while. You'll have to stop saying that, I tell Vic. I'm not leading, we're working together. I look up at the sky at all the stars, how they shine and burn, and I don't know. My father wanted to be a person who changed everything, to save everyone. It was dangerous, but they all believed in him. The villagers, my mother, me. Then I grew older and realized he could never win. I stopped believing. I didn't die with him because I no longer went to any of the meetings. All right, Vic says, but thank you for getting us this far. You too, I say. Vic nods before he falls asleep. He takes out his own piece of stone and carves another notch in his boot. One more day lived without her.